JavaScript file, but to make it respond with our HTML document, we need to come here. Let me do scripts with a source, and then I'll call this carousel.js. Okay, so I have to also bring that JS file, script file, into my index.html page. Okay, so it would respond to it. I could add it to this part. I could continue with it. It doesn't matter. This file can be very tall. Okay, containing so many functions and then variables and stuff. It wouldn't really cause any problem, but then just for you to see the thing so clear, you will not have a lot of stuff bumped up on the same page. That's why I'm separating the file for you, but it has nothing to do with because this is a data file. No, it does not. So let's go in there and start applying our JavaScript commands. To be able to access this informations, the informations on the images here, we must also be able to target these elements in JavaScript like we did for our data. If you recall, right from this place, to be able to access an HTML document, we use the get element by their ID. But if you look at this, instead of using IDs, which we could use, we are rather using class. Okay, and then even at a point, some of them also have multiple we have multiple items here, like the images. So we need to use the JavaScript functions methods that can be able to select these elements from the HTML document and then bring it into the JavaScript code for us to be able to target them and use them. So basically this is how we are going to use it. Some you are familiar with most of them that we are going to use here. So let's go in and say so we want to access the images. Okay, so we are targeting the images. So we'll say let this slide image. Okay, our images currently is going to select all the images, so it's going to be document dot query selector. Right, we are not selecting by ID, so we are query selecting all the elements, which is the image elements. So you can see that img. Let me collapse this for the meantime. So look at this. This is just a variable we have created. Okay, let that. But here we are saying document.query selector. Okay, we also have query selector itself, but this is query selector all because we're telling it to select all the images. So it's going to be in a form of an array. If you say query selector all, it will select the items and then it will be a node list of, you see, it says it's a node list of HTML image elements. So it's a list, and again I told you lists are the same as arrays. Okay, so we will be able to go through the individual images in the document. Then we also have the buttons that we want to also access. So this would also target the next and the previous buttons. Okay, so let's next, we'll call it let next btn equals document dot query selector. And because this time we are targeting only the next button, next btn, so it's not going to be query selector all, because it's not a multiple item, it's just one item we are picking from the HTML DOM. You see, this one we were selecting multiple IMGs, so that's why we say query selector all. But then this we are picking only one item, so we will say query selector, not for all. Okay, and then we'll pass in the .next class, because the next is a class. If it were ID, we would use this. Okay, if it were an element, we'll just use the name of the element, so like div. Okay, so since it's a class, we'll say next, and this is it. We are using a class of next, so we'll move to the class of previous. So next, the next one is let previous btn equals document dot query selector and then dot previous. So by doing this, automatically anytime your application loads or your page loads, it's going to target this element on your HTML document and then reference them into the JavaScript file here, the carousel.js we have created here. And then these particular variables we are storing those elements in can now become a dynamic reference to that particular element. So anything we start doing to this particular element will automatically be affecting them. So now this is what we want to do. We want to create functions that would use to slide the images. Okay, the functions that will control these images. And don't forget, we have selected all the images into a list. So it means that by loading this, let me even give you a practical example, because that is very important for a developer. Okay, so now when I come back here and reload our page, and then we come here, we've been doing a little bit of JavaScript lately, so at least when I take you through this part, you should be able to understand what we are doing here. So you see the few commands we've just typed here, only these 3 commands, and this part I want to draw your attention to. So when I come to the console, and then let me try to access that variable. Let me see if that variable is still embedded in memory. So slide images, let me call slide images. Now you see, when I call it here, even though we have done it in the VS Code, if I call it at this place in the console, because the page has loaded, you can see it says it has a list of 4 IMG. I did not tell it it's 4 images, right? But because we specified that query select these elements here, basically you can see it's picking all the images. Now it's very important, sometimes we would have to, because we may be having other images on the page. Currently we don't have any image, that is fine, but then when we load the other things, in order to do some extra checks, we can also rather do this to ensure that we are always loading from the right image source. You know, we have the images in the slides class. Okay, so we could also do this in our carousel.js by saying that these images we are picking is in the slides here, slides, and then the images inside it, right? So let me save this again, and then let's call that variable here, so slides image. So we have not done anything different, okay? But then we have tried to do an extra checking to ensure that the images is loading here is not just any other images on my page, but then it's actually loading the images from the slides container, inside the slides container. Okay, so yes. Yes.
I did the command we just used now, all the slide images, but I'm like, since it's loading every single image, even the ones JSON file.
The one in the JSON file?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The length is showing here is very long.
Okay, so now check it out. Look at my IMG, look at my slides. So how did you specify your do you have another slides and then IMG inside it? Do you have something of that sort? Because
okay, I see my problem. I already used IMG instead of this. Those slides and
you use what? So that others can also learn.
IMG. Yeah. So I used only IMG instead of those slides IMG.
You use only IMG, right?
Yes, exactly. I use only IMG instead of the
So that is what I'm trying to make you understand now. That sometimes, because we are query selecting all IMG files, if you are not careful, it would go and then be picking other IMGs on there, because we says query selector all. So every IMG in our document, you are telling it to pull it and bring it. If it's div, query selector all div, we specify here every div in our HTML DOM, that page would be picked. So that is why we are adding this as an extra checking to ensure that it only picks the IMG that are related to the slides container. Okay, so it is very good you saw it. Now others can understand why I brought this thing here. So sometimes you can do that, because if you don't do that and then you start sliding your image, you'll be seeing some other images showing up in your banner and you'll be like, where are these images coming from? You just be confused, because it's picking those images also from the other parts of your the data you are pulling to display on your page. So it is very good you had that experience, so that others can also learn from it. Good. So now we want to do our functions. So the first function we want to create is the slide. We want to slide next, okay, of our image, and then we also create another function to slide to previous. Okay, now you know this function, we can use this function, or we can also use it this way, where you say const, okay, slide next, and then you use the arrow function this way. Okay, we'll be using a lot of the arrow functions in React, so sometimes I feel like why not be introducing us to that. But this is also very valid. Okay, very valid. So please take note, they are all the same, just that with this you don't use the function keyword, but with this you don't use the function keyword with this, but here you use the function keyword. But these two things are the same. Okay, good. So I prefer to use let's stick to the arrow function now. Okay, so it means I'm going to change this to const that, and then do this and do that. So that's the arrow functions to define our functions. Then this is what we want to do. We want to apply